The mist clung to the earth as we approached Blackthorn Castle, a sprawling ruin that looked more like the jagged skeleton of some long-dead beast. Its towers were black against the darkening sky, and the air smelled faintly of mildew and decay. Jake led the way, shouldering his backpack and brandishing a flashlight like some daring adventurer. Jake, just imagine the stories we'll have after this. I trailed behind, my stomach twisting with unease. There was something off about the place. Even from the gates you could feel it, a cold, oppressive energy, as if the castle were alive and waiting. "Olivia, you're too tense, Claire. Loosen up, it's just a castle." Her confidence always bordered on arrogance, but she was my best friend, and I'd promised her I'd come. It was supposed to be a fun weekend, just 5 friends exploring an old ruin, making memories. I wasn't so sure anymore. The castle gate creaked open, rusted hinges groaning as Jake pushed it. Inside, the courtyard was overgrown with weeds and tangled roots. The stone path leading to the main doors was cracked and uneven, and the air was thick with the smell of damp earth. "Eric, looks like no one's been here for centuries." Sam lingered near the gate, her hand brushing over the carvings etched into the stone. "Sam, these symbols, they're old, really old." "Jake, yeah, it's an old castle, Sam. That's kind of the point." Sam didn't respond. She traced the carvings with her fingertips, her expression distant. "Claire, what do they mean?" "Sam, I'm not sure. They look protective, but broken, like something got out." "Eric, great. Let's all freak out before we even get inside." I followed the group reluctantly, the chill in my spine deepening as we crossed the threshold. The main hall was vast and silent, the echoes of our footsteps swallowed by the thick stone walls. A massive fireplace loomed at one end, its charred interior giving off a faint, acrid smell. Moonlight filtered through shattered stained glass, painting fractured colours on the dusty floor. "Jake, this is awesome." He pulled out his camera, already snapping photos. Olivia busied herself unpacking blankets and snacks, while Eric wandered off to explore. Sam sat cross-legged near the fire, her gaze fixed on the intricate patterns carved into the walls. I hovered near the entrance, unease gnawing at me. The place felt too quiet, like the castle was holding its breath. "Jake, Claire, you're missing out on some killer shots." Reluctantly, I moved closer, snapping a few photos of my own. The camera's flash lit up the room, momentarily banishing the shadows, but as the light faded, I thought I saw something move in the corner. Just a flicker, gone before I could focus on it. "Claire, it's just the shadows." After we ate, Jake insisted we explore more of the castle. "Jake, we didn't come all this way to sit in one room. Sam, maybe we should stay together." "Jake, we'll be fine. It's not like the castle's going to eat us." Olivia followed him without question, and Eric trailed behind, flashlight in hand. Sam and I hesitated, but eventually we followed. The corridors were narrow and winding, the stone walls slick with moisture. Every step seemed to echo louder than it should, the sound bouncing off the uneven surfaces. I tried to keep my breathing steady, but the air felt thicker here, harder to inhale. "Jake, check this out." Jake stopped in front of a massive wooden door. It was covered in deep gouges, as though something had tried to claw its way through. "Claire, let's not." But Jake was already pushing it open. The room beyond was cavernous, filled with crumbling furniture and what looked like the remnants of a grand dining hall. A long table stretched down the centre, its surface warped and rotten. "Jake, imagine the feasts they had here." "Eric, imagine what's still living in here." Sam lingered near the doorway, her eyes scanning the walls. "Sam, these symbols are everywhere." "Claire, what do you think they mean?" "Sam, they're warnings. Whoever built this place, they weren't just afraid of people breaking in, they were afraid of something inside." By the time we returned to the main hall, the fire was nearly out, and the temperature had dropped significantly. Jake suggested a game to lighten the mood, something to break the tension, as he put it. Jake, we'll take turns exploring on our own. See who's the bravest. Claire? No way, Olivia. Oh, come on, Claire, it's just a game. Claire? Yeah, until someone gets hurt. But Jake was already handing out flashlights. Jake, you'll go in pairs, it's fine. Eric and Olivia went first, disappearing down one of the corridors. When they returned, Olivia was pale and Eric was unusually quiet. Jake, what did you see? Eric shrugged, but Olivia wouldn't look at anyone. When it was Sam's turn, she flat out refused. Sam, there's something wrong with this place. We shouldn't be wandering around. Jake, fine. Claire and I will go. As Jake and I walked through the hallways, I felt the weight of the castle pressing down on me. The air was colder here, and the shadows seemed to move with a life of their own. Jake, don't tell me you're scared. I didn't answer. My flashlight flickered, and for a moment the darkness was absolute. When it came back on, Jake was staring at something down the hall. Claire, what is it? But he didn't respond. Claire? Jake? He shook his head. Jake? Nothing. Let's go back. But when we turned around, the corridor wasn't the same. The path we'd taken was gone, replaced by a wall of rough stone. Jake. What the hell? The whispers began then. Soft, indistinct murmurs that seemed to come from the walls themselves. My heart raced as I pressed myself against Jake, my flashlight shaking. Claire, we need to go. Jake. Yeah. But there was no direction to go. When Jake and I returned to the great hall, the fire was dead and the others were gone. Blankets and bags lay scattered across the floor as though the others had left in a hurry. Jake, Olivia, Eric, Sam. There was no answer. The whispers were louder now, a low murmur that seemed to crawl up from the cracks in the stone floor. They weren't just voices anymore, they were words. Whispers, leave, stay. The conflicting commands twisted in my mind, and I clutched my head as the sound grew louder, wrapping around me like a vice. Jake, we need to find them. Come on. We headed back into the labyrinth of corridors, calling their names. Every hallway looked the same, every turn leading us deeper into the castle's twisted design. Jake, do you hear that? It was faint at first. A high-pitched giggle, like a child playing hide-and-seek. It echoed through the halls, growing louder and more manic. Claire, run! Jake, what? Claire, run! I screamed, yanking Jake's arm. We bolted down the corridor, the laughter following us, reverberating off the walls. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but we didn't stop until we burst into a new room. The door slammed shut behind us. We were in what must have been a tower chamber, though the room felt impossibly large for the narrow spiral staircase we'd climbed. The walls were covered in those same strange carvings, and the air was thick with the stench of decay. Jake paced the room, his hands pulling at his hair. Jake! This isn't real, it's some kind of hallucination or gas leak or something. I didn't have the energy to argue. My gaze was fixed on the centre of the room, where a single chair sat. A figure was slumped in it, a woman in a tattered dress, her hair draped over her face like a shroud. Claire? Do you see that? Jake turned, his face going pale. Jake? What the hell? The woman's head jerked up, her neck cracking unnaturally as she moved. Her face was wrong, too long, her eyes too large and glowing faintly in the dim light. Her lips split into a grin, revealing teeth that were far too sharp. Jake pulled me back as the figure stood, the sound of her joints popping like breaking branches. The whispers crescendoed, screaming now, a cacophony of voices telling me to stay, to run, to die. The figure took a step forward, and the room seemed to shrink around her. Jake grabbed a piece of wood from the floor and swung it, but the figure didn't flinch. Her movements were fluid and jerky all at once, like a marionette pulled by invisible strings. "Jake! Run, Claire!" he shouted, shoving me toward the door. I hesitated, but he pushed me harder. "Jake, go!" The last thing I saw before I fled was Jake standing his ground, the makeshift weapon raised as the figure lunged at him. I ran blindly, tears streaming down my face as I stumbled through the twisting hallways. The whispers seemed to follow me, taunting and laughing. I don't know how long I ran, but eventually I collapsed against a wall, gasping for breath. The castle was silent now, the oppressive weight of its presence settling over me like a shroud. I found myself in the courtyard, the twisted tree at its centre casting long shadows in the moonlight. Sam's body still hung from its branches, her face peaceful, almost serene. Beneath her the word "run" was etched into the dirt. "Claire," I tried, but the castle wouldn't let me. The air shifted, growing colder. I turned to see Olivia standing at the edge of the courtyard, her face pale and her eyes empty. She smiled, a hollow, broken expression. "Olivia, she's here. Claire, who?" Though I already knew the answer. "Olivia, the Lady of Blackthorn. She's been waiting for us." The shadows deepened and she emerged. The same figure from the tower, her movements inhuman and terrifying. Her voice filled the air, not with sound, but with pure, overwhelming dread. "Lady of Blackthorn, stay." My body froze, my legs refusing to move. She glided closer, her glowing eyes locking onto mine. Olivia stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Olivia, she'll let you go if you give her someone else." "Claire." "What?" Horrified. "Olivia, you just have to stay." The lady turned to Olivia, her long fingers brushing against her cheek. Olivia's body crumpled instantly, collapsing into a pile of ash. I ran, not towards safety, but deeper into the castle. The corridors shifted around me, walls closing in and then expanding again. I stumbled back into the great hall, the fire now blazing as though it had never gone out. Jake's camera sat in the middle of the room, the lens cracked and the screen flickering. The whispers were deafening now, and I could feel her behind me, her presence like icy fingers brushing against my neck. I grabbed the camera and pointed it at her. "Claire, you want stories? Here's your story." The flash went off, blinding her momentarily. The whispers stopped, replaced by an enraged shriek that rattled the very stones of the castle. But it was too late. The walls began to close in, the room collapsing around me. I don't know how I survived. When I woke, I was lying in the misty courtyard, the sun just beginning to rise. The castle loomed behind me, silent and still. The camera was in my hand, the memory card intact. I don't know if anyone will believe me, but I have the pictures and I have the story. All I can do now is warn others, don't go to Blackthorn Castle, burn it to the ground, destroy it before it destroys you. The lady still waits, and next time she might not let anyone escape.